and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and the Data Protection Act of 2018. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with council published policies available through the council's website. Members of the council are reminded that they should follow the council's established meetings protocols, including around the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Okay. Do we have any apologies, substitutions, or declarations of interest?
Convener, we have apologies from Councillor Nelson. Also apologies from Councillor Daisley to be substituted by Councillor Reynolds. We'll move to a roll call. Can the following councillors please indicate if they're present at the meeting? Councillor Brooks.
In chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
Present chamber.
Councillor Clockerty.
In chamber.
Councillor Crowther.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Curley.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Elliott.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCormick.
In the chamber.
Provost McKenzie.
In the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Items 6 and 15, as I'm a board member of my performance, but for noting and information only.
Okay, everyone, yeah, sorry.
Agenda item number 7, and the company I work for, ACOM, is not noted in dispatches. I don't have any direct involvement in the project. I don't have any financial gains from the projects, therefore I'm just looking as a connection. In respect to agenda item number, where's it gone now? Number 10, East India Harbour Pontoon. As a board member of Riverside and Reclay, just note it's a connection because obviously it's land that is owned by Riverside and Reclay.
Okay, thanks, Chris. John?
Thank you, convener. It's just to note a connection again. It's agenda item number 10, East India Harbour Pontoon. It's just to say that I was a boat owner who had previously moored his boat in East India Harbour.
Okay, thanks, John. Jim?
Yeah, the same as a member of Riverside and Reclay.
Okay. Okay. Item number 2 is the Environment Regeneration Revenue Budget paper. I think Joanne's going to take this in Matt's absence. Joanne? Joanne?
Muted.
She's unmuted.
Muted. I was unmuted.
Can you hear us, Joanne? We can't hear you.
What's the volume that we do?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can hear you now.
Sorry about that. It's a head.
Oh.
Thank you, convener. This is a usual report to advise committee of the revenue budget position. Committee are asked to note that the committee is currently projected to underspend the £52,000. This is a movement of £21,000 from the last committee and is mainly due to a decrease in residual waste, partly offset by an increase in non-routine vehicle costs. Can I also ask committee to approve the environment outlined in Appendix 5, which is to allocate 2 procurement workstream savings in relation to the contracts for dry mixed recycling and the income generated from glass recycling. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. Any questions for Joanne? Jim, would you like just... Okay, no questions? I don't see anything online. Okay, Joanne, thanks very much for that.
Thank you, convener.
The capital Environment Regeneration Capital Programme 25 to 28 progress report. Eddie and Neil, you still take us through this?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. The capital report goes the usual multiple projects at various stages. I won't go through them all, but I'll update where anything has changed since the report was drafted. The refresh of the council's building condition surveys is progressing well. Over 100 surveys now completed and being reviewed by the property team. We expect the balance to be completed between now and the end of March. Outputs from this work will inform the ongoing asset strategy reviews and the future life cycle investment requirements across the state. There are a few days of adjustment within the appendices. Further grant funding will be confirmed for Sustrans on active travel projects, with 719,000 now being reported up from 530,000 in our work. An allocation for people in place funding has also been confirmed, covering the area of the report. On the Water Institute lift project, unfortunately, we have to advise that the completion date for this will be rapidly extended, as the off-site lift manufacturing period has been impacted by a delay in finalising the structural tie-in at the upper level of the gallery. And we're working with the contractor and the plant service to minimise the within the recommendations, there's 2 items from the GURIC, Port Glasgow Town Centre and Regeneration forums. And they're requesting approval to allocate funding against some minor projects as outlined in section 3.5. In terms of the overall expenditure and projections against the 2025-26 approved budget, reporting a slippage of 133,000, or just under 1% at the moment. I'd ask the note the report about recommendations and myself and Neil to answer any questions.
Okay, cool. Thanks very much, Eddie. Paul?
Thanks, Convener. Just your question and a couple of comments. Point 11, it's great to see that what we've been done to make routes to pathways and Wigsby Woods, and that very well planned for and that's it for that issue with me. At 3.33, just to say, we see that the project now complete, a tremendous amount of work went into that, and we just thank all the officers involved, particularly NEC, who dealt with a lot of issues that came up during the works that my constituents and they do their best to try and address all of it, so it's greatly appreciated. At 3.28, Dunmer Road, so again, I think in the last minute I can express my frustration of where that is, and I've still got that frustration that we don't seem to be kind of anywhere forward. And we would say that we're waiting the report from the option engineering work. So I'm just wondering by the committee when we next meet in March, are we going to have an idea of what is happening done with what are the solutions that the committee can pursue, because obviously, as it said, there might be additional works needed that potentially be that might impact the budget availability, and then obviously that's not just a matter of this committee, and then it has to go policy and resources, which will obviously go delay any works being eventually started if that's what decisions of the relevant committees are.
Yeah, through you, Convener. Yeah, and I understand the frustrations on the road, and again, it's just partly, obviously, mainly due to the complexity of the project and the we found in terms of the ground conditions and the investigation not completed. So that the ground investigation has said, that the conditions are not great and probably worse than expected. And we've tried to give a wee flavour of how that's impacting on the optioneering works and the text that's been provided in the report there. It does mean that it's a slightly more complex engineering proposal, even to divert the road further up the hill. We hope to be in a position to have that option work complete by the end of this month, but start of next month. We're a bit more into the next committee, but you're absolutely correct. If it is going to need consideration of additional funding, that would be then subject to further committee approvals thereafter, with member support. So we share the frustration, we're trying to move it along as fast as we can, but we also need to make sure we actually have a developed enough proposal that gives us confidence that we can take some forward.
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Okay. Thanks, Eddie. Sure.
Thanks, Convener. Would it be possible to, obviously, the government to sort of summarise why it costs £20,000 to move a few recycling bins for Glasgow?
Okay. So you can be the estimate for that at the moment includes relocating the recycling. It includes some soft landscaping. I think it also includes an allowance for creating some additional car parking spaces in a space that's being vacated. So it's not just the case of moving a few bins across. It is an estimate at the moment, so if it goes in less than that, it'll be charged less than that in advance, will go back into the regeneration forum funding.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I suppose just to give a bit of clarity to I think that the estimate we've seen at the Regeneration Forum was a lot less than that, but it was just to give a little bit of headroom in case required. But the hope is that that would actually go back to the other projects. And there's options to do a wee bit of value management as well as you go forward. Just on the Dunroad Road for me, I share Councillor Cassidy's concerns with respect to the road. I think it's a frustration felt by many in the chamber that we aren't getting anywhere with it. It's every last few meetings, it's the case of when we get this information, and as Councillor Cassidy does say, we are coming up to a head point with the budget, and it would be good if we could get some sort of clarity with respect to that before we make a decision that might actually preclude us from actually doing any work on this in a year if we don't actually have enough money to do it. We haven't identified the appropriate level of resource. It's something that's, I think it's very, very critical we do get this road open. It's the one in though there is another route to get to the Cornellees, it's the main route, the shortest route from the A78 to get up to our visitor centre. And I'm also conscious of the fact that 2027 is the 200th anniversary of the cut. So in reality, we really want to be seeing something moving on this, because we don't want a situation where something that would be a great ability for us to attract people into Timberclyde, into Greenock. A great example of what you call Scottish engineering, 200 years, still going strong, still have an opportunity to be able to do it, and we just can't get people up to visit it. So I think it's very critical we do get some sort of movement on this as soon as we can.
Okay.
Not really a question is that, but just a reinforcing the point.
Councillor Reynolds?
Thanks, convener. It's just a quick comment about 3.27 Kern Drive one way, since it's my ward. The one-way system under the ETRO, I've had no negative feedback about this, so I hope that the survey monitoring will be positive. One concerned citizen that I've had quite a lot of emails from then emailed me saying it was a joy to drive down Kern Drive, which is really nice to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, any more questions? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, convener. 3.6, Eddie, the library at the Watt institution.
Yep.
Obviously, we're again talking about anniversaries, 150 years of the Watt institution. I know this is something problematic. I know you've said it to us. Most of the disruption work has been done, but you'll be looking to manufacture a lift. That's the feedback you've given us.
Yeah.
And I think I've sort of pushed back to you to say, look, great, but obviously we're at that substantial anniversary point on it. If we can't possibly get the library opened, if we can't get the institution opened and have that section blocked off until the lift is manufactured and the baby to go in, I think that will send out the right message that we're not shutting it for the sake of shutting it. But we're trying our best to ensure that in 150 years we do recognise what a substantial building that is, and what a fantastic what a fantastic use it is to the people of Greenock and Inverclyde in general. So it would just be my plea to you that if we can do that and liaison with our communities, colleagues, that we try and do that.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, I think you can be we are working with the service to try and facilitate that if we can. I mean, they are allowed a certain amount of time post completion for moving everything back to you said, without completing all the intrusive work and all the dusty work. So it's possible we could move the exhibits back and potentially reopen and then have a barrier off for the remainder of the work. We're investigating that at the moment. If we can make that happen, that's acceptable.
Okay, thanks, Eddie.
Okay, thanks. Graham?
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Welcome that as we're speaking, I believe there's white lining going down into the Cap Street at get round the roadworks. So that's to be welcomed. But on white lining, I know officers love receiving emails from me because obviously they're very polite and appropriate. But I just wonder, is that the best way for us to find out? Because there seems that backlog of white line required, or line, whatever the words, might make the number there. Is there a list of projects that you've got out that we can see and see the emailing you? Or do you just prefer that constituents more than me, I come on to you to ask if that's in the line, the white lining schedule? What would the officers prefer?
You can be that, I mean, it is quite a detailed level of operation matter that you're requesting information on. It's not something I think is appropriate to send it off to every committee. There is at any given time, we'll have a list of outstanding areas that we're working either to put in a tender or will already be in a tender. I don't have that in my head, obviously I need to seek that from officers, but I'll certainly consider a better way of sharing that in a more regular way, just to provide oversight.
It would just seem, receiving another email from another elected member and the energy that costs. If I could see the cost, the energy that you have to into that, if I can see what's in the schedule, then we'll just have constituents. We're on to it, we're going to do it soon.
What I would say is that we also rely on people reporting things as well to add that to our regular list. So I wouldn't discourage people from reporting it here, whether there's issues.
So yeah, please to see my emails.
Absolutely. Why would they not be here? John.
Thank you, Convener. Councillor Curley made reference to the 200th anniversary of the Greenock Cut, and I note there that in 3.11 there is tenders to repair the nature field path at the Greenock Cut, and that they are being evaluated. Could I seek assurances that this work will be undertaken and completed prior to the 200th anniversary of the Greenock Cut?
Neil.
Thank you. Yes, so the update from the report is that the contractor's now been appointed to undertake the works.
Okay, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Sandra, is that a legacy hand you've still got up, or do you want to come back in? I take it was a legacy hand.
Yes,
okay. Councillor Taylor, Ian.
Thanks, Michael. It's paragraph 3.23, when we're talking about the Cove Road, has been paused by Sustrans with regards to awaiting further funding. That might go into 26-27. It just seems rather inconvenient that that route is going to be a part that's not completed when most of the other routes, when we take in Talbot Street, Battery Park, etc. I just wonder if the council officers could maybe give some sort of push towards maybe getting that done, certainly in 2026, rather than pushing it any further. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Ed.
Through you, Convener. Yeah, I mean, I'll take that back to officers and understand we're more why it's been paused, and if we can put that in an early programme in 2026, then we'll certainly do that. But we'll again be subject to receiving further funding from Sustrans, and they tend not to be very good at letting us know that early in the new financial year. It tends to be later in the financial year when they make these awards, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That's right, come on.
Yeah, I was going to ask a question about I noticed that there's a consultation going on about the active travel strategy, and obviously this is going to feed into our projects going forward. I'm just wondering how that will feed in, because obviously there's a number of projects here, and whether or not there'll be a case of reviewing the ones that are further out on depending on the views that come back from the public. But just on that point, because obviously we've got the active travel funding, which I think there's been an allowance in the budget yesterday, which would obviously work its way. I think it's 40 million or so, which would work its way through Timberclyde. So is that's a separate fund from Sustrans funding that they then decide what ones the projects they want to actually fund in Timberclyde? Because it obviously seems a wee bit of a false demarcation from our perspective, that we've actually got somebody else in control of funding, and then we get the funding as well on a very similar basis.
Convener, I'll do my best to answer that. I may have to refer to my colleagues in roads. And we certainly get an allocation for Tier 1 active travel funding. It used to be CWSR, what we called it. And we use that predominantly to undertake feasibility studies that will feed into potential capital bids, either through Sustrans or elsewhere. I'm not sure if it's that fund that you're referring to that's going to be increased. It maybe is, because I know they have increased it, partly way through the year, the last couple of years, to say you get another couple 100,000 in that particular fund. we don't just use it for active travel, it covers quite a wide range of projects. The active travel strategy refresh that's ongoing just now, again, we're using funding that's financial year dependent, and that work should be complete by the end of this financial year. The intention is, it's a few years old now since we did the last strategy, to review the position now, how far we've got on the priority routes, where the next priorities are going to be, and just basically an overview of where we're going to be going, and hopefully, towards the end of that programme, what we're going to get out of it. So it's an overall encompassing review, and we'll take obviously corporate feedback and then in that account we'll pull that together. I haven't seen a draft for that yet because it's still too early. So hopefully it'll be complete by the end of the financial year.
Okay. Can we agree on recommendations? Yep.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Sorry, Peter.
I'll just say just one point to check that I'm assuming members were in agreement for the recommendations in item 2 as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Okay, item number 4 is the Pride and Place Programme Regeneration Plan. Neil.
Thank you for your convener. So this report is providing an update to members for noting on the £18.5 million awarded to the Greenock Town Board to dispense. Predominantly the report is attaching the draft regeneration plan, which has been developed under the oversight of the board. It's submitted to UK Government for consideration and approval. In terms of the regeneration plan, I won't go into the substance of it in too much detail. However, what it does is it works to a prescribed formula by the UK Government, which is required to effectively be mandated so that funding can commence for the programme. So it's being developed to a sort of pro forma style. It's currently with the UK Government for consideration, and we're expected to be back in March in terms of seeking approval for that, and that would allow the funding to go. I have referenced in the report section 3.3 the funding allocations for the future years, and that's dependent on the approval of the plan. The plan has got a number of projects that are proposed for the developing through the funding, and those are obviously given the nature of the programme at quite an early stage at the moment. And so they're being developed by officers and support of the board, and with the oversight of the board, and will advance in the months and years to come. In terms of the report, I've no further details to provide. I'm happy to take questions on that, but just obviously noting the condition under which this is approved as a draft report. It is early on in the programme, early on in the development project, and we've got to expect evolution of the projects in the plan itself as the programme grows.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Any questions for Neil? John.
Thank you, convener. I actually welcome this report, and I agree with basically everything that is on the report. However, there is one point there that maybe can I emphasise, and it really goes back to the Southwest Hub, and that was where they understand that there was should be more work done in attracting employment. However, looking through the regeneration plan, it does mention there about the Future Ready Greenock, and that relates to this skills programme, and also to there's mention there of Inch Green. Is there any other areas that could possibly come under the employment aspect of it?
Yeah.
Thank you. So you can so just to reiterate, the plan's at an early stage, and projects that are outlined in I suppose a headline sense. So the work that will be done to develop the detail of those projects will will be undertaken by officers and to develop full proposals, and those will be in turn approved by the board, and we'll give feedback to members on that. In terms of the Future Ready Greenock programme, that is one of the earlier lead programmes, and we're currently undertaking procurement phase in that point. Support to work with the schools and build that into curriculum. One of the key priorities for the board was entrepreneurialism skills, and so that's fed through this programme, and officers are working with the education colleagues and the cluster heads to develop that programme. In terms of future opportunities, absolutely there will be more of them, and we'll certainly the sort of policy drivers in the programme are a balance of placing investment improvements in community and education and skills. So that range of drivers and policy behind the programme is there. I would expect to see further development of opportunities in future.
Okay, that's very nice, lovely. Thank you.
Chris?
I think,
Oh, sorry, Paul, you.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, it's a really good and interesting report. I suppose two questions I could have is just how is ongoing engagement going to be structured, with the community, ensure that their voices still shape things going forward, in particular about with like young people, about how they're going to have that voice and say these projects.
Thank you, through you, Convener. There has been engagement today, and it has had a focus on young people and a reference to Future Ready Skills programme, which is going to engage with young people through the curriculum. There's been a range of activities undertaken so far, and there's been a range of there's a grant programme to build up community engagement through the fund so far. So there has been components of engagement in place so far, and some included in that have a particular focus on youth. At this stage, the draft plan, the board have decided not to publish the draft plan because under consideration by the UK government. Upon approval, there will be more of an announcement around that, and then subsequent consultation. There'll be consultation built into each of the projects as you anticipate. So it's very much in the DNA of the programme. It's a requirement of the UK government funding that is well consulted on and engaged with, including with young people.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Chris?
yeah, thanks. It's just on the circa £2 million a year being raised annually. Obviously, we've got a sort of plan here for the first 2 years. Does the funding follow your business plan? So, for instance, if 1 year needed £2.5 million, the next case get £2.5 million, £1.5 million, or you just get a standard £2 million a year? How does that sort? Is there flexibility in how we can actually draw down effectively the money per year?
Through you, Convener. There are mechanisms by which you can vary. Some of those include, potential effectively borrowing ahead of coming. So we need to see what the programme looks like when the projects are developed, and we understand the sort of cash flow of the projects. There are ways and means to accelerate and move that in the programme, but we will get to a point where we've got a clear understanding of the financial profile of the programme as the projects develop and share that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Elliott, Ian, is that a legacy hand you've got?
Apologies.
Don't worry. Just worried when councillors from Goor keep waving at me. We've got concern. Okay. Can we agree recommendation? Oh, sorry, Graham.
That's pretty dull.
Thanks, Convener. So I'll go to the report as well. It's also quite well written, and pages for a big page was it 37 and 38 gives the strategic case range, which I think all elected members will read and understand what is being proposed, or what the history is. I just wondered if officers would comment. So, speaking to an entrepreneur this week who is investing in local business and Clyde, a strategic change to his investment plan is to move a high percentage of his investment to Dubai and to the businesses that you can run from Dubai due to, I'm going to say UK politics. I don't really think the UK politics here, but in his opinion, it's harder for him to run businesses in the Clyde than it's obviously going to invest elsewhere. So how do we speak to entrepreneurs to encourage them to invest in the Clyde?
Can you want to?
Yeah, thank you to you, Convener. So I think in terms of the question, the composition of the board is worth pointing out. We've got the chair of the board is Lord Billy Haughey, and we've got local business representatives on the board to help guide that. As I said, and I don't think this is a coincidence that the early priorities of the board include entrepreneurialism. So that's absolutely part of the ambition of the board is to support local businesses, to attract business investment, etc. I would also probably refer to one of the projects which is the concept at the moment is the enterprise hub that's suggested in the report. Again, officers are working on the scoping aspects of that to look at what would serve Greenock well, and we'll continue to advance that through the board's board's oversight. So I think there's quite a strong sense of entrepreneurialism in the board through the priorities that have been set and through the representation on the board.
Thanks very much, that's very helpful. I just hope that they do listen to those who choose not to invest here, so they can have a learning experience from those who put money elsewhere.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Neil. Okay, can we agree recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, item number 5 is the Lower Port Glasgow Regeneration Study. It's been the subject of our briefing last week. Neil?
So the report for you, similar to the last item, has an appendix which includes Lower Port Glasgow Regeneration Study, comprised of Lower Port Glasgow Master Plan and House and Led Regeneration Study. The documents we produced, again, I'm saying things I said in the last item, but through wide engagement with a wide range of stakeholders. It's been through the attention to Regeneration Forum, and it was subject of a members' briefing. So I'll not go into too much detail about the content of the report. I'm happy to take questions on that. In terms of the purpose of the document, it's looking to set out a long-term vision and actions to support the regeneration of Port Glasgow. It's a document that has proposals in there through the form of actions that are in excess of £25 million investment worth. It's important to note that the document isn't seeking approval of investment, but it's rather the strategy. And officers are continuing to work and engage on with officers from Scottish Government around further support through investment for the priorities identified. The report also covers the Pride and Place funding award of £1.5 million that committee members will remember was approved for Port Glasgow back in October. We have to report to Scottish Government on high-level spend items by February, and so this report is setting out high-level spend items, but in line with the vision for the regeneration study, and that is, ostensibly to pump prime, the strategic investment that we're looking to seek for Port Glasgow. Specifically, the items for approval are strategic acquisition strategy, which will be partnered with funding that already exists for the same purpose. Shop improvements at John Wood Street, subject to the properties being on watertight and environmental improvements in the town centre. As I said, officers are continuing to work with Scottish Government, and there's been an offer from Scottish Government to look at innovative funding for place-based investment. So that isn't materialised yet. We are taking up that offer to explore funding opportunities. As I said, I won't go into the detail of the report as such, but I'm happy to be led by questions in that respect.
Okay, thanks, Neil. And what one, Chris?
No, I defer to the provost.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Navina. Yeah, it's a very exciting report, quite widespread, covering the whole of Lower Port Glasgow. Although the report, for us, I've seen 2 or 3 of these reports now about Lower Port Glasgow, there is a lot of consultants speak within it. And when you get down to the bones of it, there isn't much there. It's all kind of a vision, so we up there. Since it got made public, and I was in the telegraph last night, they phoned me to say what I thought about the report, and my email inbox has been red hot since then, with folk in different parts of Port Glasgow, because it takes in Chapelton area, it takes in the High Home area, and it takes in the town centre, covering both John Wood Street and King Street, the alleys, and all that. Plus, it has this vision for the town centre itself. And therefore, I think it's very, very important that the council here will let the people of Chapelton understand where we hope to go with this. Let the people of High Home Street understand where we hope to go with it. The residents of John Wood Street and King Street, about what we hope to do there. And all the residents of Port Glasgow, being all the residents of Inverclyde, to understand what the vision is for the central area of Port Glasgow. And therefore, it is highly important that we have a regular flow of information coming from the council here, positive or negative, to all the people who have a vested interest within the area in which they live and work. And I think that is so important, it must be taken on.
Okay.
Thank you for those comments and through you, convener. Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to provide updates on progress on this. There's a wide range of proposals in here, and it is ultimately to set a wider vision for the, a significant scale of investment coming to Port Glasgow to effect the regeneration. So happy to provide that feedback. I would say in terms of the early spend items from the prime in place, there's dependencies in there. So the John Wood Street shops being invested in is subject to building and watertight, and the acquisition strategy is clearly got dependency on third parties. So within the programme, the time will be to deliver, but you're quite right. Those are dependencies which we'll need to report on in terms of whether success or failure or requirement to adjust the strategy to accommodate.
Okay, thanks for that, Drew. Neil, Chris.
Thank you. As I say, I've got the report. Yeah, we have been here before. There's been a few action plans, charrettes and things like that, but I think we're getting there now. I think there's the opportunity here with the prompt timing funding to make the strategic acquisitions. And yes, there is going to be big changes, and it is going to be changes that I've not seen in Port Glasgow. 52 years old. It's been very stable. Infrastructure and architecture in Port Glasgow, and the facilities very safe. So it'll be a big change to Port Glasgow. So it is important we do take people along with this change. And as we see, I've looked in detail some of the stuff what was we suggested at Chapelton, at High Home Street, and in the alleys. That's going to be big changes. A couple of things I want to just pick up on is with respect to wind and watertight. Now, this has been a big bugbear at the Central Regeneration Forum, is getting these properties wind and watertight. And obviously now we've identified an amount of funding for that. Is how we actually make sure that we do that. Part of that will be a responsibility, because we'll have responsibilities apart from the factoring, etc., that we own the shops, etc. But it's how we drive this on, that we actually get these properties wind and watertight to enable us to actually access this funding, because it would be great to see John Wood Street reinvigorated with new shop units, keeping what we need, because there's one or two shop units there which have a little bit of a charm to them. But I think the most, it would be great to see that. And second of all, it's always been an intention with both the ask for the Inverclyde Task Force and that, is to use that to actually garner in additional funding that can be used more efficiently and to actually help the regeneration of Inverclyde. So it wasn't necessarily new funding, but it was funding is there and actually allocating it to Inverclyde. Now, obviously, we had the information from the budget yesterday that one of the early initiatives is going to be the Port Glasgow Health Centre. Now, that directly ties into the comments within this report about how we create a community hub, opportunities for relocation and all that sort of stuff. So it's how we take that ability for that funding to be available from the Scottish Government perspective to aid this regeneration of Port Glasgow as well. How do we see that going forward?
Thank you. In terms of the John Wood Street properties, the officers and council have been liaising with Inverclyde Homes around that specific issue with a focus in regular meetings to actually try and advance that. So there is engagement on that to achieve that purpose. That's been reported to the Regeneration Forum, and happy to provide feedback on that in terms of how that progresses. In terms of the task force asking the health centre, again, this was an item that was discussed at the Regeneration Forum, as you well know. But what I advised at that meeting was that this is not a site selection document for a health centre. What it is setting wider opportunity, investing in place, for example, through acquisitions to assemble land to create development opportunity sites. The document supports a range of uses such as housing to live in, public communities and whatnot. So what it's doing is creating the opportunity that if there were funding through whatever means to deliver public health facilities or any other facilities, the document enables that. So that's the purpose. So it's an enabler rather than a document that actually provides a site selection process. Yeah. Clearly, there'd be other land use considerations for moving forward. And then those would take place, but it's an enabler, and that's how it fits into the jigsaw. It helps us to engage with anyone who has funding to be able to bring that in to help deliver a wider pot of funding. on the engagement with the Scottish Government so far, what they're looking at and what in part of this document is doing through, for example, SHIP funding is looking at where different sources of funding could come together to actually build that pot of funding. So it's a vision that's set an opportunity. It's utilising some funding that's known to be there and looking at use of other funds and other funding.
Yeah. Just so you spoke something, I just want to also, the rhetoric, not rhetoric, that's the wrong word, but the about silo thing. So I don't want Scottish Government and I guess knowing about a new health centre for Glasgow. When we've got to think, we have an opportunity for us to regenerate and look about how we do it. So just making sure we have those early discussions. I suppose that's all. Just make sure that because it's I know it's not a site selection, but there's an opportunity here to sort of like to make sure something's bigger than some of the parks. And I think it's a great opportunity to bring, and this is a good example. That's initially a bit of funding that's going to come here. As you say, the SHIP funding can come here, and the other funding models as well. We'll hopefully be able to bring a large amount of funding to Port Glasgow.
Jim?
Yeah, I just want to say well done to Chris. I didn't know that the funding had been confirmed for Port Glasgow with Health Centre.
Wow.
So that's a new one to me, so that's really good. I don't know how much it is. I know the Green Up one cost about 20 million and it was all done through the health board. So it's fantastic to hear that we've managed to secure, I don't know how many million, Chris, if you've been managing to get a figure for us.
No, not yet, but what do you call it? It's one of the
so we're definitely getting a new health centre for Port Glasgow within the next couple of years. Sorry,
I know you're being a bit political now, but
I'm not, Chris. You make a statement in Environment Generation saying that we're getting a new health centre.
I'll just refer you to
Brighton Capital and to congratulate you for that and asking you when is it confirmed if we got the money for it, or is it just election in 6 months' time, 5 months' time, and we're doing that in order to get the electorate? I think it's a fair enough challenge.
No, I think that the government has stated that this will go in early interventions for health centres in Scotland based on deprivation, based on the needs, and based on the state of the existing health centre. So I think that's a positive for Inverclyde. Builds upon the money that's already spent at the Green Health Centre. I can't give you a specific, a time for that to be developed. Obviously, there are already plans for looking at the detailed design, and that's why I'm raising it here. Is because if they're already going out to tender for the detailed design, we have to make sure that detailed design can take account of what we're looking for in Port Glasgow.
Just a figure, Keith, money-wise, date-wise, any?
I'll get back to you.
Right, okay. Right, anything else want to come in?
You said it.
Well, it's on right, Jim.
Yeah, it's on right.
Okay. Okay, can we have can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay, item number 6 is the Inverclyde Strategic Housing Investment Plan for 26-27 to 30-31. Neil?
Thank you again through your convener. So the SHIP report is something that members will be used to. It's an annual cycle we went through committee. This particular report is proposing to submit the SHIP to the Scottish Government slightly late. And the reasons for that is that there has been, following the work of the Housing Summit, significant growth in the programme that's proposed. And the liaison was to just format that and get that appropriate place to submit. So the reason for those positive intentions because that's significant development programme, growth of the programme. In terms of previous SHIPs, it is referenced in the report is that previous several SHIPs have delivered development programmes that have not delivered the full programme anticipated, and that's resulted in shortfall in grant claim in Inverclyde so far. That was one of the key drivers for the Housing Summit taking place last April. That brought together a wide range of stakeholders, as members know, to look at changing that and making a difference. In response to that, there's been a very positive feedback, particularly from private sector interest. Notably from private sector interest, there is a significant appetite to propose mixed tenure development following this private sector developments. and that's been how we have driven further development sites that are noted in the SHIP. Those sites are anonymous at the moment because of commerciality, but obviously it's a much more positive direction of travel that there is an increased programme, and the Scottish Government have informally given us commentary that that's to be welcomed, and a welcome output from the House and Summit took place. Part of those discussions around the grant claim, and as I mentioned, the underclaim situation that we've had in Inverclyde, the Scottish Government has been, can we smooth the profile over the 5-year programme, so that when the developments that are being proposed come on stream, we can utilise funding for that. Because of the way that Scottish Government funding works, we've been advised that we can't balance the programme over 5 years. However, Scottish Government encouraged officers to over-programme for the SHIP. And the purpose of that is that if in future years there's spare funding in the system, which happens mostly on an annual basis, and Clyde would be well placed to benefit from that. So again, it's not a promise of money, but it's a very positive indication that we've got upturning private sector interest, upturning programme from the SHIP, positive reaction from that from government, and opportunity to start to win back some of that money that's been lost. And most importantly, to build new houses. I'll not talk about the detail of the report, and members will be familiar with the format, but I'm happy to take questions on that.
Okay, thanks, Neil. Any questions for Neil? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I've got to admit, I'm sitting here and it's a wee bit like deja vu. I feel as if the questions I'm asking, the statement I'm asking, are the exact same as made over the last couple of years. First of all, very well done in the House and Summit. I think that is the extremely positive and really well done to Ian and Neil and his team for doing that, and I look forward to getting the fruits of that over the next year or in the future. But I think it'd be remiss if we didn't mention the £20 million coming back to the Scottish Government. And I think it'd be remiss not to register our disappointment with our local social landlords. I know we've got Graham here on the board of Clyde Homes, but it is extremely disappointing. I mean, I'm sitting and I'm looking at my new build that's Sanctuary done, the old health centre site, and I'm thinking, what a fantastic job they've done, and it's really positive to see that social housing being built in the middle of our ward. It's positive. But then I look at RCH and I look at the other ones and I'm thinking, what have we done? What has changed over the last few years? They're not building any more houses, right? They're saying, well, okay, we're building more houses, we're just going to drain it from the housing stock we've already got. But if we get other housing associations come in, then the exact same thing's going to happen. So the Sanctuary people are going to come for RCH homes, you would assume, to go into the Sanctuary. So it's not really an excuse for not building new houses. You actually look at the buybacks, and we've not done any buybacks either, which is extremely disappointing. I mean, I've pushed many a time, and what I get for RCH is we can't do that work because we've got private owners and X, Y, and Z. And you push back to them and say, well, you've got the ability to buy back now. We've even had the property in the oldest council building, ex-council building in the town, down on William Street. You buy these properties back in order to have control of the tenement property, and that allows you to do things. So we don't see any buybacks, we don't see any new build, but more importantly, we don't see any regeneration of the properties that we've already got. I'm sitting in the Greenock Town Centre, no Graham's the same, some of the oldest social rented buildings within Clyde, and we don't see any improvement in them. We just see them going down in a spiral downwards year after year after year. And you actually say, right, okay, free up the land, let other housing associations in, let's broaden out Inverclyde, let private sector in as well. I've absolutely no problem with that. Private sector coming in and doing a certain percentage for social rented sector as well seems the best idea. But again, I've done the exact same speech over the last 2 years, I think it's the third year. It's just to register my disappointment of the lack of build and the lack of buybacks, mainly from our social landlords. And I know it's unfair for you to speak on it because you've done your side of the story, your side of the partnership. It's just, I think, one side is lacking.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Was it John first?
Thank you, convener. Just going kind of along the line that Jim has been on, many of the RSLs are sitting on land that's been on the local development plan has been earmarked for housing, but year on year that land is just lying vacant. It's now overgrown, and we just wonder if there's any way again that that can then be transferred over to another RSL for development, which hopefully would allow the LDP to be enacted. Also, from page 139 through to 143, the future projects. Now, these projects, in most cases, list the actual areas that the development is on. However, I know under Sanctuary Scotland, there are two areas, Greenock Site 1 and Greenock Site 2, of which there is no area being quoted. Could you advise what those areas are?
Thank you. Through you, convener. So the future projects, so this is a public facing document, and you'll understand commerciality and development processes that have to be gone through before we can declare sites, in a named fashion in the public document. So we keep sites anonymous at the moment, so I can give full detail of that in private session, but it can't be within the SHIP of the document. I can advise you on that just now. But the sites that Sanctuary are looking at, that are developed, they've done due diligence on the sites, they're keen to take them forward, so they just can't be named, in this report. In terms of stock transfer land, yes, so they're part of the housing. Someone was looking at how we can utilise that asset to drive new houses, new private and affordable houses, and there has been considerable progress on that. Again, I can't give reference specifically to sites, but there are live interests in taking forward some of those sites. Obviously, bound by stock transfer arrangements, and we're looking at how those can be dealt with and going forward. Ultimately, the ambition is yes to utilise that asset to build new houses, including partial through the SHIP programme.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Well, I suppose I take Tim's point about the housing, being a previous member of the Lighthouse Board to make decisions for the board. But it's one of those things. I suppose Sanctuary coming in, they don't have they could just come in and take money. But you're right. I suppose the difference is it's Sanctuary punching you in the face as opposed to you punching yourself in the face when it comes to losing the void properties. But it is something we do need to address. How we actually get the situation where we actually can fill in these voids, and that all comes down to employability, getting more jobs, more people who want to stay in the area. So it's all tied in. My question just was a couple of questions on the report. I like the report, I like some of the stuff that's happening around Port Glasgow with respect to the rethinking about the tenemental stock, etc. and stuff like that. That will tie into the plan for Port Glasgow we just discussed as well. And obviously with this will be probably the third iteration of these properties, because they were originally constructed in the 1930s. They were then fixed and amended in the early 1980s, as far as I can remember. And then we're looking at late 70s, early 80s, and now we're looking at the third iteration of these properties, which again shows the sustainability of them. If we can actually get it to work, that houses that are almost 100 years old can still fill a function in Inverclyde today. And I suppose that's what we want to see is identify what's the best of the legacy housing, and then look at how we can improve that and build the communities in place and things like that. And I suppose the funding from the Scottish Government has to be more flexible when it comes to an area like Inverclyde. The idea that we all need new built houses is not necessarily what we want to do. Looking at just a couple of points with respect to the wheelchair accessible housing, I know it's maybe not part of this one, that might be part of this, but have you done an assessment on what we have? Because we've got approximately about 10% wheelchair accessible housing as part of these proposals. Has that been evidence based? Because I know it's something raised in the past about how many wheelchair accessible housing we need to do as part of the development. And second of all, about the numbers on units, are these purely the numbers for the social rent and in SSC houses, or is, if for instance we're looking at the site A in Port Glasgow, would the other houses that may be part of a development is alongside that, a private development alongside that? Because I'm just looking at thinking that 97 houses, if it's the site I think it is, then there's possibility of getting more houses on that site. So I'm just wondering to see, are we just looking at the houses that are SR or NSSC, or is there other houses with partner developers that are going along the site there?
Thank you, Commissioner. So the programmes for social rented housing largely, there can be other types of housing. It does include, for example, private sector development might be co-located on a site which is purely for the purposes of the programme for grant take. In terms of the wheelchair accessible, I would get back to you on an analysis being done, as you know, from we do conditions on new developments that have to have a percentage of accessible, for wheelchair houses. So it's something that new developments would be required to complete. But I'll check in with the team in terms of any analysis on wheelchair accessible housing within the existing stock.
Yeah, it's one of those things because obviously a lot of our housing stock is not wheelchair accessible. So if we're putting in new stuff, we obviously need to try and balance that sort of out. So, and it's been something that's been raising about whether or not we want to be a bit of a push goal with respect to that. Maybe not necessarily fully wheelchair accessible, but enabled such that it would be something that would be easy to do it in the future. And obviously, so thanks for that, and thanks for clarifying about the maybe partner developments might go alongside these affordable housing developments.
Probably just to add, and sorry to you, that what we're seeing, the majority of the demand for housing is for backdoor access housing rather than in flat blocks, and where there's some condition issues in the stock. So notwithstanding specifically wheelchair accessible, that is the sort of profile of stock that the demand seems to indicate it's there for.
Thanks very much, Convener. I'll 3 points, and I'm not here to represent Riverbank Homes, but I'll just welcome the Riverbank Homes now with no tenants or no customers, if you like that phrase, that did have the stock transfer. So it's been successful at SL and it's progressing to actually have more customers now than it did 17 years ago. If I go to SHIP, it's page 138, a big number obviously 138. I think nearly partially answered this one, so maybe free get a jail card. Stock transfer allocated funds and green funds. So the SHIP reports that there's been no receipts of 24-25. Obviously goes on to explain that assets transferred must the capital receipt goes back to the Scottish Government. So and there's been no receipts in 24-25. If you look ahead, it says they're hoping that will change for the future. Just wonder if you get any narrative you can give to it on that one, because I think that's really important. It hasn't been brought up, but I'm looking for a positive comment because I believe there's positive comments out there, and I just have in chamber today. My second point, if I may, on page 139, is in reply to the acquisition programme, which again is also brought up by my colleague from the ward. I found it hard to find the funding in there. Somebody has advised me that there was funding available to up to £2 million for the acquisition. I just want to clarify, are any of the RSLs putting their hand in the pocket, or is this purely taxpayers' money for the acquisition programme? Third and finally, unfortunately for me, the SHIP is silent on the Armed Forces Company, which is currently in force. And I also believe the UK government is taking a piece of work through the House, which is going to around 7. So the 3 duties will extend to 14 legal duties. We also, at the moment it's due regard, which I'm sure officers will be familiar with, but the piece of legislation then turns it to offer special provision should the disadvantage be relevant to the individual's service to His Majesty's forces. Interesting that the SHIP is silent on the Armed Forces Covenant. I just wondered if there is reason for that. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, Neil, it's been there.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. So in terms of capital receipts from stock transfer sites, what we asked at the Housing Summit in the Scottish Government were we're in agreement with ways in which funding can be used innovatively. They've given an open invitation for us to have discussions with them about how we can retain that money locally for the use into affordable housing funds. So that is that's something that's actually part of the consideration of any of the developments that come forward that that category. In terms of acquisitions, the acquisition money in the SWIP is grant funding for, and it's the maximum permissible funding for RSLs to go and purchase stock. Whether or not they utilise their own funding to top that up to purchase property to bring up to standard, it's not accounted for within years. So it's only government grant. In terms of the armed forces covenant, I mean, obviously the allocations policies for the RSLs will cover that. However, I'd be happy to add a comment in to reflect that that's the case, and to have that reflected.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm a directing officer, so that's not my position. Is there is potential change in this ship will then be up to the part of the change? Obviously, officers to clarify, my information is that this offer of special provision, it will now become part of the covenant and will be legally obliged to do that if they will, so that itself don't be. So it would be helpful if my information is accurate or something to about that.
Okay, thank you. I'd also like to kind of thank Neil regarding the success of the Housing Summit as well. But one thing I would like to to suggest would be that new builds would maybe be priced that young local families could access them. I know from experience with my own family, I think properties within the kind of 250 to 300,000 mark would be an acceptable level, for young families kind of to aspire to. So I'd like to think that if there is land going to be kind of set aside for private use, that would be factored in, hopefully.
Give me a clear response.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know this is the planning board, but multiple times during the planning board, degassing, putting in storage for butchers, a lot of people to deliver, and putting in electrical charging points are all extra costs that developers are now having to meet under legislation and under our legislation, which puts the cost up. If I remember correctly, at the Housing Summit, the figure of £10,000 per unit was commented on, which is an additional cost to developers as a result of degassing. So the more we interfere with the housing market, we being the state, then the higher the price for the consumer.
Okay. Paul?
Yeah, no, I knew all the comments my colleague Councillor Corty you've made in this. I appreciate the amount of work that you and your team have put into this, and hopefully from that summit we see a lot of returns off it. I think it's frustrating to see that 20 million go out replied could have been spent by RSLs here. And I can just think of you cite that number of RSLs sit on Inverclyde, that would be suitable for housing, particularly even in my own ward, and it's frustrating that they're sitting there, nothing being done, and there's a potential that if our RSLs aren't for building, we're looking at others coming in. Difficult to mention the sanctuary project in his own ward. I visited that as part of World Housing Day last year. That is a phenomenal development, high quality, certainly in a great location as well. Councillor Cullen mentioned about to say wheelchair accessible housing. I think the SHIP's got in it, it's 5% of wheelchair accessible housing on a site, 20 plus units. I think my current question on that is, are we confident that that's enough? We see that there's a rise in demand for specialist houses for disabled people and older people. We've got an aging population as well, so really is that going to be enough to meet that rise in demand?
Thank you. So, Convener, so just in terms of the quantum housing provided for special needs, that is factored into the programme in terms of the specific development sites that are for shelter protection and such. So I think that the provisions for standard housing sites to have a percentage of, but there are also the strategy, local housing strategy covers for special needs housing, which would provide to cater for those certain situations in certain locations.
Okay, thank you. Okay, am I agreeing recommendations? Great.
Can I ask, is it an understanding they should also add in a comment when Armed Forces Covenant should that be appropriate in understanding, not directing them, but if that's the wish of officers, then it wouldn't remain silent on that.
I think the local housing strategy has some reference to this, but in any case, I think it's something that can be accommodated in the document.
I'm content with that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 7 is the energy and climate change strategic heat network study update. Draft climate change plan consultation and public bodies climate change report. Eddie?
Thanks, Convener. That's where I would go on. Report provides an update on the very first thing like energy and climate change and net zero. 3 areas. The first dealing with an update on the progress of the heat network studies, which relates to the delivery plan for the council's current local heating efficiency strategy. And the report outlines the further funding support to provide to the Scottish Government and the other various partner agencies involved as the 3.6. And we're currently engaged with the technical consultants, AECOM, on the further technical economic modelling work, with the outputs not expected to be available at the end of April. Second area of activity, just moved with the Scottish Government's currently consulting its draft climate change plan, which is open responses on the 20th of January. And we're currently seeking feedback from the officers of the Council's Climate Change Working Group to have a response to the issue. And then our last item provides an update on the annual climate change monitoring report of the Scottish Government. The summary of the Council's done information included in the body report and the appendix. And the report provides more detail on certain factors influencing the various increases and decreases across different areas of council activity. And the last report committee on this in January 25 advised that emissions had increased linked to the additional emissions from the leisure operated assets, the fact that the gas and electricity cost was unexpaid through the council. The 2024-25 figures confirm a reduction of 904 tonnes or 7.2% from last year, mainly due to the effect of the new residual waste contract and a reduction in electricity and gas consumption across the estate. That's the note report with the conditions and part of the council.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. Any questions for Eddie? Chris?
Thank you. There's a couple of things in here, obviously, and I welcome the report. Not going to have up saying that. But what we're looking at is the issue with respect to the report mentions about Broom Hill, and obviously we know there's been lots of issues with respect to Broom Hill with ability for it to be a robust system. And I suppose looking forward, if we're looking at trying to deliver an implemented strategic heat network, it's building and ensuring we build that robustness into the system, that if something fails, something else can take up the base load. And I think that's mainly what Broom Hill has shown, is individual schemes that don't have that robustness. I'm not as acquainted to the issues as I would have been a board member of Blight Homes, but I do think it is an important example of something we can learn. It was a great opportunity, and I think it was well meaning, but I think it's identified some issues that we really need to look at if we're looking to progress this technology going forward. That as well, with respect to the looking at our internal climate change data return, it's good that following the addition of the Inverclyde leisure stuff, that's now starting to reduce again, and hopefully that will continue. I'm conscious of the fact is that part of it will be reduction of energy demand, but also we need to look at how we actually get our energy. And as an authority, we have a large amount of land in Inverclyde, own a large amount of land in Inverclyde, and we already see there's been successful wind farms done and things like that. So are we looking, as part of our strategy, like other local authorities have done, I think North Ayrshire Council have been investing in solar power systems, etc. Part of that to actually to offset their carbon. Are we looking at opportunities in Inverclyde to provide energy generation that will enable us to offset our energy use?
You can be in terms of looking at other ways of offsetting energy use. I mean, yes, the short answer to that is not at the moment, although there have been some interest probably over the last couple of years from private funders coming asking us if we have got appropriate land. Now, the areas of land that are predominantly we're looking at are linked to, you know, Clyde Muirfield and have would not necessarily be appropriate for that type of use, would maybe not be supported for that type of use. Other than that, we've got limited land holding that would be appropriate for things like on North Ayrshire, where it's solar farms and land. We don't have vast acreages of land that is suitable for that, and it probably points in the wrong direction generally into the river, which is north. I know that isn't, you know, when they stop things working these days, they're cleverer than they used to be. It is something we will look at, but at the moment I think there's probably more limited opportunity in Inverclyde than there are in some of the other authorities. But we wouldn't exclude it. It's something we certainly consider.
I suppose you make a point. It's a lot of these renewable energy is to do with the specific locality and what your things are there. And I take the point with respect to the wind turbine, which is slightly in the usual part, but whether or not that it could take any more. But obviously, we're also in a large heat site, which is the Clyde Estuary, and how we can, as there's opportunities to make use of that facility, which isn't maybe necessarily available for other areas in Scotland. So horses for courses, but I think it'd be good to try and see, because it might be a long-term energy, as well as being an energy ability to offset energy. It might also give us an income stream that would actually help going forward for many other things, because we touched upon that in the RAP. With respect to the cost of electricity use and things like that, with the streetlights and things, there's only so much we can do. It's only streetlights, but our ability to be able to offset that cost with energy generation would be very useful.
Oh,
thank you, Peter. Yeah, Eddie, a really interesting report. Definitely, good to see that 38% reduction in our emissions since 2012-13. Even once we include the Inverclyde leisure properties into that as well. I think one of the things this report highlights as well is that to achieve all of this is going to require a lot of significant investment, because it isn't cheap to do all this. I'm particularly interested in the heat network progress on that, and the mention that Ravenscraig is being looked at. Just wondering if there's been any movement with the hospital, and having interest from GDC to be included in that, because it's particularly interesting given that there's a big push from the Scottish Government on this, that a public body is maybe not engaging in it.
Yeah, through you convener. I mean, we haven't got to a point where we've got the outputs to report back to the committee on what. What I would say is that in terms of our stakeholder engagement, we're speaking to all the stakeholders that are affected, including NHS estates, and they are engaging with us. We don't have a firm commitment either way at the moment, but we're certainly continuing to progress that line of inquiry, because facilities like this will make a significant difference to the viability of the network.
okay then, John.
Thank you, convener. The question I was actually initially going to raise was in respect of the Inverclyde Royal. That's now been responded to. So all I can do is to make a comment, and the comment obviously is very positive, and it's good to see the collaboration between the Scottish Government and Inverclyde Council, especially in the relation to the strategic heat network study. And the surprisingly, there's one that's completely new to me, and that is the participation in the Danish Board of District Heating mentoring scheme. Could you give us any details on that? It's a totally new one to me.
Yeah, through you, convener. I mean, the Scottish Government have been partnering with Danes now for a good number of years, and put in place this mentoring programme, because they've obviously are decades ahead of everybody else, and particularly us. The Danes come across and they support development, they facilitate different councils and organisations, not just in Scotland, but we've been talking to local companies and learning from other people on how they've gone about this. So it's been really, really interesting, and it's been really beneficial for us to understand and try to avoid some of the issues that other people have come across and try to develop their heat network. So we've been participating in it for the last 2 years. There's another year starting very shortly, and we'll continue to participate in it. Again, being part of the kind of 8 authorities, I think, that are involved with this funding to look at the the economic feasibility networks. We are in the first, vanguard of these. Some are further ahead,
Yeah.
obviously. And we'd like to be in a place where we can take something back and recommend it, but it will very much depend on the commercial viability and how it fits in.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Just looking forward, everything seems to be a bit more, I have more confidence now, and thank you for your response.
As long as it meets with the Danes, doesn't it take place in Greenland? That's the only thing I would maybe concern myself with.
How much network there?
I don't often agree with Councillor Curley's comments within the chamber, but I have to say his concerns over the Broomhill district heating system are well made. I would like to think if we're going to be talking about expanding such systems, that we've got to learn from the problems that we've been encountering at Broomhill. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, the heating system was down again, resulting in 600 people in the Broomhill area having no heating or hot water, and it's been happening. Chief execs get involved today with this, but this has been happening over the Christmas period, and it's unacceptable, and something really needs to be done about it. And I'd like to think that if we're going to be expanding this type of system locally, that we would certainly need to learn from the mistakes made at Broomhill. Okay, just a comment. Okay, can we agree on recommendation? Sorry, Jim, sorry.
Thanks. First things first, I was just going to say to my officer colleagues, if you're looking for members to go on a site visit to Copenhagen, I will follow my sword and be one of the ones that are willing to do that to see how it's done in Denmark. But in more serious points, we talk about, Chris talked about generation of renewable energy. We've been here over many, many years. We're one of the hilliest and rainiest places in Scotland, and we've tried so many times to try and get a hydro scheme up and working. I'm sure in 50 years time or 20 years time, some councillor around this table is going to say, why do we not have a hydro scheme in Verclyde? Because we've got water everywhere. So I realise that it's still on the books somewhere, but I realise it's very hard to get the partnerships in place and the cost effective in place to do something like that. So my wish would have been, before I sailed off to the sunset, that we would have a hydro electricity unit in place somewhere in Inverclyde. And I believe it is still getting worked on somewhere, Eddie. It's not off the table yet. It might be, but I thought it was still working. So that would be my first comment. My other one is, of course, we've been successful in the peatland restoration, which has been very good. But also we know, and we shouldn't hide from the fact at how expensive it is to do these fits for zero energy as well. It's incredible. Eddie was talking the other day about the King George building Pro Glasgow, how much that cost us to get to net zero. We've talked about social lent landlords trying to do it net zero as well. It is expensive, very expensive, and we've got our school estate, so we know it's not easy, and it's not going to be easy to hit any targets if we can.
Okay, yeah, sorry, Sean.
Through you, not one councillor talked to sail off into the sunset, but we do have an operational hydro scheme in Inverclyde, and we do have a consented 1 megawatt scheme within Inverclyde.
Good. Thanks, one.
Okay, right, Graham.
Yeah, I was going to bring up that, but there are plans for another one before one of our local bodies, our local local Scottish organisations, local permissions, those are coming. That was going to be my first comment to Chris. So the successful wind farms here, the land in Gentry find them very successful as they have the rate from wind farms. My constituency who have massive bills or green levies or the amateur bills don't see them as successful. But the biomass obviously is a big issue. And I fear that we have not learned from the past, which was comments from the convener. In 1970, the Roxburgh Street Estate had a heating system, a community heating system. I think with Jim and I were boys. I wouldn't call it Chinatown because that's not appropriate nowadays. But the Roxburgh Street Estate had that community heating system, which failed. And now we have a new heating system, very similar, apart from it wasn't biomass in those days, it was gas, and it seems to be failing again. and again. And I'm also aware that not only is fearing us constituents don't have heating and hot water, but this seems to be very expensive. So we have constituency paying lots of money for a fairing system. So the challenge then to officers is that have we got the technology and clearly for the heating systems, community heating systems, the answer is no. So if they go into the poor, so we're talking about a major investment here. We're talking about a lot of public money going into this. And does officers believe that we have the research, the technology, and the understanding that it will happen, and not obviously to take things going forward that the officers are obviously clearly not political, but if polls would believe that the climate act will be paid after the next general election.
Yeah, through the convener, I mean, I can't comment on the setup of the Broom Hill system because it's not ours, so I don't have that level of detailed knowledge of it. It isn't new. I mean, it's a good number of years old, so it's not a new system. And the systems that we've been to see as part of our visits through the mentoring programme this side of the Water Main in Scotland, they all have backup. They all have as gas backup, and I know that's something that Scottish Government are wrestling with at the moment because they are pushing to have low carbon or low carbon systems, but the reality is you need some sort of backup in case those systems actually fail or you're applying for whatever. So certainly what's called this one's called the gas fraction is something that's been looked at just now. How much gas backup do you need? Because you need something, and how low carbon a network can you do it? So I think we would never be putting anything forward that wouldn't have adequate backup because we do need our buildings to perform and always be operational. We have got a biomass system in the Port Glasgow Community Campus. Again, it is operational. It's not at the moment, but we have full gas backup. So it's always, that building's always got gas backup. And that's how we've always moved forward. But we wouldn't have something that would have any redundancy with it.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris.
The hydro schemes, obviously, first of all, I suppose we just talked about the green cuts, that's 2027, so the hydro scheme for 200 years of help power, very early on. With respect to the cost of energy, that's tied into the cost of the most expensive energy, which is actually gas, not renewables. So therefore, that's pretty electricity. Otherwise, that's why they wouldn't be doing it that way. And I think, I suppose the Broom Hill, my understanding is that it has a gas backup, and gas backup has also been problematic as well. But I take at this point that we have a system with the Glasgow Community Campus that has worked and has a gas backup, and so there's a way of doing it. But I think the more we connect these things together, the more robust the networks will be. But we do need to, I think, based on the relations locally at Broom Hill, we do need to make sure we take everybody on board with us because it hasn't been a resounding success, definitely. And we really need to make sure that we're trying to encourage people to get to net zero, ensure that we have a sustainable long-term ability to survive on this planet as we've evolved onto it. We really do need to be doing these sort of things.
Okay, can we agree recommendations? Great. Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 8 is a sustainable procurement strategy from 26 to 31. Eddie.
Thanks, Convener. The report presents the refreshed procurement strategy covering the period 2026 to 31, included as Appendix A, which replaces the previous strategy replaced from 2022 to 2025. The previous strategy delivered a range of benefits and improvements, which have been summarised in Appendix 1 of the strategy document. A refreshed strategy builds on the progress made under the previous strategy and the actions put into delivery plans support the delivery of council's strategic priorities across people, place and performance. The proposal section of the report summarises the activity across some of the key strategic areas, which is spend compliance, social value and community benefits, fair work, local supply inclusion, net zero, and how procurement benefits through the budget process through the procurement savings workstream. The implementation and tracking of progress against the new strategy will be through the delivery plan, which is included within Appendix 3 of the document, and with the intention to report annually on that procurement. So that's the point of the report, approving recommendations of David.
Oh, any questions for David or Eddie? No.
No.
Right.
Just on, obviously it's a strategy for 5 years, helping to be reviewed, because you noticed in the appendices there's actually interim targets for next year, I think. So just wondering how we track that and see how we're going on with the respect to our target dates. We've got a number of these here that community wishes delivered, 25 to 26 ongoing. So I'm just wondering how we see how we actually review these targets and whether or not there'll be other targets then brought in after as we refresh it.
I'll try and answer that and I'm going to bring David in for comment. But the intention is obviously it's a live delivery plan, so we'll probably bring it back in alignment with the annual procurement plan, just to bring up and you'll give you an update on where we are with all the actions. And at that point, it's appropriate to change or adjust any of the targets that was something we put forward at that point. David, I don't know if you want to expand on that or pass it off.
No, that covers it, Eddie. Effectively, it'll be done annually as part of our annual procurement governance process, and it will be reported to committee at that point.
Okay, thanks, David.
Just another question about the community wish list. So is that going to be a public facing list? Is it something that people can actually see or contribute to? I know the idea is to get people to contribute to, but I'm just wondering how that list is actually, how transparent that list is and how we can see what's on it.
I'll pass that on to you, David, if that's all right.
Through you, convener, and thanks for the question. Yeah, it's a public-facing list that's available through the website. I can send the details on, but we have done 3 or 4 different seminars where we communicated the website, our approach, our methodology, and how we're going to do this with the community groups and also with suppliers, just so that we can try and get some traction behind, the delivery of that. And I think to date we've got about 45 community groups approved with about 30 suppliers on there, and we're starting to make some real progress in the delivery of the wishes from that wish list, so you can actually see very clearly what wishes have been put forward and also what wishes have been delivered, and ultimately once they've been delivered you can then put forward more wishes. So there's a lot of work that went on with the community through the community team, but also through CVS and engaging with the supply base to make sure we're getting this out there as much as we possibly can, and we're now starting to really realise the benefits of that.
Thank you, that's very interesting.
Okay. Paul?
Thanks, Keir. Yeah, I was just want to check if I heard you right, just in response to the answer to Councillor Hurley there. The intentions would be that this will come back at the same time as the annual procurement report. Yeah, I think that would be exciting. It would be good to review both at the same time. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, can we agree recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, item number 9 is road asset management strategy. Eddie, you again.
Yeah, thanks, Maria. The report presents the review of the roads asset management strategy. There was a member briefing on this last week. I won't put the report in detail, but I will highlight here the puts in the modern report and the main area of focus in each of the elements for the roads assets. So the value includes some of the investment in the roads assets over the last 12 or 14 years. But that also summarised graphically and in data tables in the appendices. In terms of carbon base, the main consideration is to address the forecast deterioration and an improvement in the road condition index position, which will require additional investment. It's also recommended that we look to incorporate a programme of proactive surface treatments, so looking to surface questing or micro surfacing, in addition to the full or partial carriageway reconstruction that the current input programme in that programme. Main consideration for footways is again to address the forecast deterioration, which will require additional investment. Also important to note that we also don't have a large amount of new assets being adopted, as development activity is fairly limited and will not change. We have been fairly successful in attracting subfunds or upfunding for access to our infrastructure, and that expanding network will require to be monitored and maintained along with the footways. There are a few considerations in the street lighting category. We now have virtually 100% of those assets converted to LED. We will need to consider a replacement programme for that LEDs. The earliest of those units are now over 10 years old out of their warranty periods. At the moment, we're also managing to address 100 to 150 column replacements per year, and that requires to be increased to address the backlog of life expired assets. It's also recommended that we develop a forward programme for the renewal street lighting, cabling and control cameras, as the age of the proportion of the network is such that there's an increasing risk of failure. In consideration in the other assets category are wells and bids that form part of the flood risk management activity across Inver Clyde, and I need to undertake more detailed assessments of those assets to identify improvements for access and or life cycle replacement and upgrade. In terms of the outputs from the modern work, tools used by the consultant are used by all 32 local roads authorities, developed through the Scots Asset Management Project. 4 modelling scenarios investigated are noted in section 3.24 report. Summary position from that work is that the model steady state scenario is projected to require circa 19 million over 5 years, or 3.8 million per annum, which indicates there's a cap of £1 million per year based on the current funding levels. The corporate management team considered the report, and the report being presented to the committee today includes within the proposals that an additional borrowing cost associated with an indicative amount of an additional £500,000 per annum be investigated to partially address the identified funding gap between the current roads capital funding application and that required to maintain a steady state position. This obviously is subject to member support and potential considerations as part of the ongoing budget process. That's the committee note for approved recommendations.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Eddie. Very thorough report as normally we get from that, and the key one is at 4.3, as you said, when we're looking at £500,000 in a year to stabilise the road condition, if I read it right, not to improve it in any way, just to make sure it doesn't deteriorate to any great detriment to what it is now. I suppose that from us, we're going to get a budget briefing on Monday. And I suppose what we're going to do is, we've got this paper here, alerting us as the committee, but I dare say that's getting fed in through the budget process as a budget pressure to see whether or not we want to do. And I assume, reading the paper, I assume it'd be some sort of potential borrowing we're looking to see on that. So I suppose I'm happy with that. I'm happy with the very fact that we've been through, those of us been here for a while, went through this a long time. We've done the schools, we've done a sports strategy, we've done the school strategy. We then went to the ramp, we put more money in the ramp. I suppose what I would say, if it's going to the budget group, it will be up to, we keep it within the members' budget working group, and they're all in agreement with that. It is a decision whether or not we want to improve the roads network, or we want to stay stable on it. So I know you've got 0.5 in there, but is there options that you'd be putting for more money in that, if that makes sense, to perhaps do more improvements to our roads than what we're currently got, if that makes sense to you, Eddie?
Yeah, so you can, I mean, just to clarify, the 0.5 million will not achieve steady state. So if the modelling scenario telling us that steady state, you need £1 million a year.
Right.
So I think the corporate management team recognise that, given the challenges associated with how much limited capital funds we're getting, and likely it's going to be cut again, asking for £1 million might be a bit too much optimistic, but certainly something rather than nothing without. And there are certain other pressures and different elements of that roads asset, not just the carriageways that we need to look at in terms of lighting and following with and the housing that's associated with floods. Some really important items in there we can't continue to underinvest in.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. Yeah, Graham.
If I was going to be asked, yes, so obviously, Jim's brought up, 4.3 potential of £500,000 being borrowed. I just wonder, is there a revenue cost to pay that back? Obviously, do you wonder if other officers have that figure for us? And I don't know what this committee would do, but I just, so we've got the big picture, what actually that figure would actually be. And in the same conversation, Appendix 1F talks about, sort of page 218, talks about the road maintenance revenue budget, and you can see that it's under pressure, the maintenance budget. So previous decisions that have been made, and I'm not reiterating previous decisions, but this is the having been put extra pressures on that. I believe the 20 speed limit throughout over 1,000 roads will require revenue on an annual basis, which is not covered by any grant. So am I correct in assuming that we're going to put extra pressures on this as previous decisions of this council has made?
So you can be in terms of the cost of the borrowing, I don't have a figure on that. I mean, it's just in the report to investigate the cost of that. So I would need to prepare my colleagues in finance, but bear in mind that each time you borrow 500,000, it costs you a certain amount, and if you want to borrow another 500,000 a year after, you double that effect, roughly, and for however long you need to pay that back. So I would prepare finance colleagues for that part of it. In terms of the question on if putting future pressures on the revenue budget, yeah, the revenue budget is clearly been reduced. You can see from the graphs and the tables in here. I think we did include it within the 20 million reports, and it's generally for refresh of any kind of 20 million windows and any signs. Pretty modest. I mean, the signs tend to stay there and not need anything done for them for a long time. And the markings, all depending where they are, how often they need refreshed.
But the cost of the green energy to like will be challenging.
So there's always a cost of it. We put in, yes, and we do appreciate that has to be absorbed in the revenue budgets, because generally when you get capital funding for something, it doesn't come with associated revenue assistance.
That's helpful, Convener. Thank you.
Okay, John.
Thank you, Convener. Once again, I welcome this report, and could I focus on the structures under page 223? And the report mentions that each structure is inspected approximately every 2 years by qualified accredited structural engineers or inspectors. And I also note that there appears to be regular checks by Network Rail. However, there is one other bridge that I can think of, and that's in Brome Street that comes under Clyde Operations Limited. As that passes over public road, do Peelports also check that that bridge is structurally safe, bearing in mind that it's now being used on a regular basis to transport containers back and forward?
That's a very good question, Councillor Trevor, and it's one I don't know the answer to, but I will endeavour to find out and come back to you.
Okay, that's lovely, thank you.
Okay. Can we agree with recommendations? Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the rest of the items are to be held in private.